So we're simplifying these expressions here, okay, radical expressions. So assume that all variables are non-negative, okay? Assume that all variables are non-negative real numbers, okay? Not negative ones. So we take the first one, square root of 18. So what can we do? So remember, when we're trying to simplify these radical expressions, we want to simplify them into like numbers that we are used to, real numbers that we're used to, okay? So that's why we also have to think in terms of the perfect squares numbers, okay? Perfect square numbers is like 4, because 2 times 2 gives you 4, okay? Like 16, because 4 times 4 will give you 16. Like 25, because 5 times 5 will give you 25. So those are what we call the perfect square numbers, okay? So now, is 18 a perfect square number? No, because you don't have a straight number, real number that multiplies itself to give you 18 like that. No. So what do we have to do? So we have to break down 18 into 2 numbers. Oh, okay, at least 2 numbers or more, but 2 numbers is always better. So into 2 numbers where 1 is a perfect square number and the other 1 is not going to be a perfect square number. Again, 18 has to be broken into 2 numbers where 1 is a perfect square, the other one is not a perfect square. So what can we find out? So that's why, again, your multiplication table is coming into play. I said this in many of my videos, ladies and gentlemen. You get your multiplication tables done, you are on the roll, okay? So let's go. So what can we do here? So this one can be broken down into 2 times 9 because 9 is a perfect square. So sometimes also, if you have these kinds of problems, you can put down your perfect square numbers. You can make it up, as a matter of fact. Okay, make up your perfect square numbers, meaning what? That means you have 1 and then put square, which is what? 1. 2 squares, which is what? 4. 3 square, which is what? 9. 4 square, which is what? 16. 5 square, which is what? 25. 6 square, which is what? 36. Okay? 7 square, which is 49. So you can continue, all right? So you have these down, okay? And then that will help you whenever you're working with your problems. It helps you to see like, okay, if I have 18, one number cannot divide 18 by to give me another number evenly, okay? So 18 can divide it by 9, and then it's twice. So that's the reason why this one would be 2 times 9. Okay? And why 9? Because 9 is the perfect square. You see what we can do also? So you don't need your calculator. Okay? You can make up your own perfect squares right there. Okay? So we're talking about perfect squares. Okay? All right? And then you're good. All right? So now, because 9 now is what? 9 is a perfect square of 3 because 3 by 3 is 9. All right? Or we can continue by putting for now. So we put 3, then square. Okay? And then we know that 3 squared, because of the radical, we can take it outside. So now, that will become 3 outside. Okay? Only this one with that. But then what happens? The 2 stays with the radical. So your final answer is 3 square root of 2. So I took time to explain what we'll be going through. All right? So now let's take the next one, which is square root of 54. So how can we break down 54? Also, that's all we have to look for. So what number 54 can divide by over here? Can 54 divide any of these numbers here? Okay? Can it divide 4? Can it divide 9? Okay? Can it divide 16? All right? So your multiplication table is still, asks 4. So 54 can be divided by 9 because 6 times 9 is 54. So that's the square root of 6 times 9 also in this case. All right? So same thing that we just did. So this one is just the same thing as 6 times 3 squared. And then 3 squared, this one can be crossed out. So the 3 will come out, because now it becomes a whole number, okay? And then 6 is just 3 times 2, and both numbers are not perfect squares. So then the 6 will stay under the radical, and this will be your final answer. You see now? We can get on the roll. So anytime you begin, take your time. Sometimes it may seem a bit confusing, but go back, look at what we said, look at what we did, and then I'm sure that you're going to get it. Okay? So let's go to the next one. So the next one now is 16 times x power 5. So now we're just mixing up a little bit. All right? So we're putting some juice in there. So now 16. Is 16 a perfect square? So if you look here, 16 is a perfect square of a number 4. Correct? So the 16 is going to come out. So all, we can just take it easy for now. And then we said 16 is 4 times 4, so that's 4 squared. Okay? Times, now how can we break down also x to the 5th? Because x to the 5th, which is a variable, we also need to take the square root of that. So how can we break it down? So to break down the variables, it's all about breaking down to 2 numbers that you can also multiply, but one of them has to have a power of like an even number so that that number can divide 2, which is the index here. Okay? So how can we break down 5 into 2 numbers where one is a whole number and then the other one is not a whole number, but you added them because remember when you multiply variables, you add in the powers. So that would give us x to the 4th times x to the 1 power because x 4th times x1 is going to give us what? x5. Because when you multiply the variables, you add the powers. So can 4 divide 2 evenly? Yes, because 2 is that one there. So let's go at it. What is square root of 4 squared? The 2 and this one we cross out. So that would give you what? 4 outside, the radical. And then now 4 divided by 2 is going to give us 2. So x to the 2nd power, so goes outside. And then this one cannot divide 2 evenly. Okay? So that stays under the radical. And this will be your final answer. All right? So this is how we're going to do it. So right now we're explaining, we're taking time to understand. And then later on, we become experts, masters. All right? So now 40. How can we break down 40 into 2 numbers? One is a perfect square, the other one is not a perfect square. When you multiply them, we get 40. It's going to be 4 times 10 because 10 is 2 times 5. And 2 is not a perfect square, 5 is not a perfect square. Are you with me? Okay, so let's go. So now that'll be 4 times 10. All right? And then what about the a power 6? The a power 6, the 6 is already an even number. So ladies and gentlemen, this is your tip. 6 is an even number automatically. That can be, you can take the square root of that because 6 can divide 2 3 times. Now what about 7? So let's go at it. So a6, we can keep it. And then what happens to 7? That will be b6 times b1. Because remember, we break it down to 2. That you can multiply 2 factors. So it's b6 times b power 1. Okay? And then what about the 4? The 4 is square root of 4 is 2. All right? So the 2 is going to come out. What else is coming out? For the a, is 6 divided by 2. That will give you what? 3. So a3. What about b? B also 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then b1 stays under. And then what else stays under? 10 and b. This will be your final answer. Okay? So 4 is a perfect square of 2. So 2 goes outside. Any perfect square will come out. Anything that is not a perfect square will stay under the radical. Keep that in mind, okay? So 10 is not a perfect square. So 10 will stay under the radical. B power 1 is not a perfect square. It stays under. 10 is not because 10 can be only broken down into 2 times 5. And they are not perfect squares. So it stays in. B power 1 because 1 cannot divide 2 here. 1 cannot divide 2 evenly. So the B stays. But 6 can divide 2 3 times. So you have A, 3. 6 also for the B can divide 2 3 times. So B3 also goes outside. And this is how you get it done. And this is your final answer. Go back at them and then say, so we're going to do more and more of these so that you guys can grab it, grasp it, and then do well, excellent on your test.